As the smoke clears over Tehran and a nation of 90 million people faces the most uncertain moment in its modern history, most of the world is watching Iran as if it were only a crisis, a regime, a nuclear threat, a war zone. But Iran is not a crisis. Iran is a civilization, one of the oldest on Earth. 5,000 years of continuous culture, language, poetry, and identity that have survived everything the world has thrown at them. Greek conquest, Arab invasion, Mongol devastation, colonial manipulation, revolution, and now open war with the most powerful military alliance on the planet. To understand what is happening in Iran today, you have to understand the 5,000 years that came before, because Iran is not a country that began with its current government. It is a civilization that has outlasted every government it has ever had, and if history is any guide, it will outlast this one too. If you find these stories fascinating, make sure you subscribe to Bloodlines and Borders. Long before the name Iran existed, the Iranian plateau was already home to one of the earliest civilizations in human history. By around 3000 BCE, a powerful kingdom known as Elam had emerged in southwestern Iran, centered around the ancient city of Susa. Elam was not a colony or an offshoot of Mesopotamia. It developed independently from the populations already living in the region, who over centuries organized themselves into complex city-states and kingdoms. The Elamites created their own writing systems, built monumental temples, and became active participants in trade and war with neighboring powers like Sumer and Babylon. For nearly 2,000 years, Elam was one of the major powers of the ancient world. But by the 6th century BCE, after repeated Assyrian invasions and the devastating sack of Susa, around 646 BCE, Elamite power collapsed. Its fall cleared the stage for the people who would transform the region and give it the name the world still uses today. In the first millennium BCE, Indo-Iranian tribes migrated from the Central Asian steppe into the Iranian plateau. Among them were two groups that would shape the future of the entire region, the Medes and the Persians. The Medes were the first to establish a large Iranian kingdom in the 7th century BCE. But it was their southern neighbors, the Persians, who built something the world had never seen before. In 550 BCE, a man named Cyrus the Great united the Iranian tribes, defeated the Median king, conquered the kingdom of Lydia in Anatolia, captured Babylon, and expanded Persian power eastward towards Central Asia. Within a single generation, he created the largest empire the world had ever known. But what made Cyrus remarkable was not the speed of his conquests, it was the way he governed. Unlike every conqueror before him, Cyrus allowed local religions, traditions, and customs to continue under Persian rule. When he captured Babylon in 539 BCE, he permitted exiled peoples, including the Jews, to return to their homelands and rebuild their temples. These policies were recorded on the Cyrus cylinder, a clay document that some modern scholars have described as one of the earliest expressions of human rights in recorded history. Under Cyrus and his successor Darius I, the Achaemenid Empire reached approximately 5.5 million square kilometers. The Persians built an advanced administrative system, constructed the famous royal road spanning the empire, standardized taxation, and organized their territories into provinces called satrapies. Their imperial capital at Persepolis became a symbol of power so grand that ambassadors from Egypt, Greece, and India traveled there to present tribute. For nearly 2 centuries, this empire stood at the center of the known world. Then in 330 BCE, the young Macedonian conqueror Alexander the Great invaded. Persepolis was burned. The Achaemenid Empire collapsed. But Persia did not die. It simply waited. After Alexander's death, his empire fragmented. Control of Persia passed to the Seleucid dynasty, and Greek language and culture spread across the region. Yet this foreign rule remained fragile. Iranian traditions persisted beneath the surface, and by the mid-3rd century BCE, a new Iranian power emerged, the Parthian Empire. Originally nomadic people from northeastern Iran, the Parthians gradually expanded to control the entire Iranian plateau and Mesopotamia. They became Rome's greatest eastern rival, halting Roman expansion and controlling key segments of what would later be called the Silk Road. For nearly 5 centuries, the Parthians maintained Iranian identity while absorbing influences from both east and west. In 224 CE, a Persian noble named Ardashir overthrew the last Parthian ruler and founded the Sassanid Empire. Under the Sassanids, Iran once again became a highly centralized and powerful state. Zoroastrianism was established as the official religion. Persian art, architecture, and scholarship flourished. The Sassanids fought long and exhausting wars against the Roman and later Byzantine empires, conflicts that lasted over 400 years. The final and most devastating war, from 602 to 628 CE, drained the economic and military resources of both empires. It was at precisely this moment of exhaustion that a new force emerged from Arabia. Beginning in the 630s, Muslim Arab armies advanced into Sassanid territories. In the decisive battles of Qadisiyah and Nahavand, the Persian army was defeated. The last Sassanid king, Yazdegerd III, fled east and was killed in 651 CE, ending the empire. With the fall of the Sassanids, Iran gradually became part of the expanding Islamic world. Islam slowly spread across the region, transforming its religious landscape in ways that would prove permanent. Yet even under Arab rule, something extraordinary happened. Persian culture did not disappear. It adapted, absorbed, and ultimately reshaped the civilization that had conquered it. The Persian language was revived in a new form, written in Arabic script, but fundamentally Persian in grammar, vocabulary, and spirit. Iranian scholars, poets, and scientists became central figures in what historians now call the Islamic Golden Age, producing masterworks in medicine, mathematics, astronomy, philosophy, and literature that influenced the world for centuries. The physician Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, wrote medical encyclopedias that were used as textbooks in European universities for 500 years. The mathematician Al-Khwarizmi, whose name gives us the word algorithm, laid the foundations of algebra. The poet Ferdowsi spent 30 years writing the Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, an epic poem of 60,000 couplets that preserved the entire mythological and historical memory of pre-Islamic Iran in the Persian language, ensuring that even under Arab political rule, the Persian cultural identity would never be lost. This pattern of foreign conquest followed by cultural survival and eventual reassertion is the defining theme of Iranian history. The Arabs brought Islam, the Iranians made it Persian. In the 11th century, the Seljuk Turks rose to power, adopting Persian culture and language even as they ruled with Turkic military force. Then in the 13th century came the most devastating catastrophe in Iranian history. The Mongols swept across Central Asia and into Iran with a violence that destroyed entire cities and caused population losses from which some regions did not recover for centuries. Yet even this did not break Iran's cultural continuity. Within a generation, the Mongol rulers began adopting the traditions of the lands they governed. They converted to Islam, embraced Persian administrative systems, and patronized Persian scholars and artists. The pattern repeated itself once more. The conquerors were conquered by the culture they had tried to destroy. In the late 14th century, Timur rose from Central Asia and his campaigns brought further devastation, but the Timurid period that followed became one of the most remarkable eras of cultural revival in Persian history. Cities like Samarkand and Herat flourished as centers of literature, architecture, and science. The creative spirit of Persia could not be extinguished, no matter how many armies tried. In 1501, a young leader named Ismail I founded the Safavid Empire and made a decision that permanently reshaped Iranian identity. He declared Twelver Shia Islam the official state religion. This single act distinguished Iran sharply from its largely Sunni neighbors, especially the powerful Ottoman Empire, and created the dual identity that defines Iran to this day: Persian in culture and Shia in religion. Under the Safavids, particularly during the reign of Shah Abbas I, Iran entered a period of extraordinary revival. The capital city of Isfahan was transformed into one of the most magnificent cities of the early modern world, famous for its grand mosques, public squares, and thriving markets. The Safavid state firmly established the foundations of what we recognize as modern Iranian national identity. By the 18th century, Safavid power had collapsed. Iran spent the following decades torn between internal chaos and external pressure. The Qajar dynasty rose to power in the late 1700s, but by this time, powerful European empires were closing in. Russia pushed southward, seizing territories in the Caucasus. Britain sought to dominate southern Iran to protect its colonial interests in India. Although Iran was never formally colonized, it was increasingly trapped between these competing empires, its sovereignty eroded by foreign concessions, economic exploitation, and political manipulation. The discovery of oil in the early 20th century intensified foreign interference dramatically. In 1906, the Persian constitutional revolution represented the first attempt to establish a government limited by law rather than absolute monarchy. But the people's hopes were crushed when Britain and Russia backed the Shah in suppressing the movement. In 1925, a military officer named Reza Shah seized power and established the Pahlavi dynasty. He modernized Iran's infrastructure, built railways, opened universities, and in 1935 officially renamed the country Iran, meaning land of the Aryans. But his sympathy toward Nazi Germany during World War II backfired. In 1941, Allied forces from Britain and the Soviet Union invaded, forced Reza Shah to abdicate, and placed his young son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, on the throne. The new Shah initially ruled under heavy political pressure. In 1951, a nationalist prime minister named Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil industry, taking control from the British-owned Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. Britain responded with economic sanctions and a global oil boycott. When Mossadegh refused to back down, Britain and the CIA launched Operation Ajax in 1953, overthrowing the democratically elected prime minister and restoring the Shah's authority. After the coup, the Shah ruled with far greater power, backed by American military aid and propped up by his feared secret police, Savak. He launched the White Revolution, a sweeping program of land reform, industrialization, and social change that modernized parts of the economy but disrupted traditional society, enriched elites, and widened the gap between rich and poor. In 1971, he spent enormous sums hosting a spectacular celebration at the ruins of Persepolis, marking what he called 2,500 years of Persian monarchy, a display of extravagance that infuriated millions of Iranians living in poverty. The resentment this created, combined with the brutality of his security apparatus and his dependence on Washington, would prove fatal. The most vocal critic of the Shah was Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, exiled in 1964 and smuggling his speeches back into Iran on cassette tapes. By 1978, protests had exploded into a nationwide uprising. On January 16, 1979, the Shah left Iran. On February 1st, Khamenei returned to Tehran to a reception of millions. Within months, the Islamic Republic of Iran was established. The revolution transformed Iran's foreign policy overnight. Relations with the United States collapsed after the Iran hostage crisis. A year later, Saddam Hussein invaded, starting the Iran-Iraq War, an 8-year conflict that killed hundreds of thousands and ended without territorial change. After Khamenei's death in 1989, leadership passed to Ali Khamenei, who maintained a confrontational stance toward the West while building Iran's network of regional proxy forces. For 37 years, Khamenei held power through a combination of religious authority, military force, and ruthless suppression of dissent. In January 2026, when the largest protests since the revolution erupted, his regime killed thousands of its own citizens to maintain control. 1 month later, on February 28, 2026, joint American and Israeli strikes targeted Iranian leadership and military infrastructure. Khamenei was killed in an airstrike on his compound. His daughter, son-in-law, and grandchild were also killed. Iran's defense minister, the commander of the Revolutionary Guards, and multiple senior intelligence officials died in the same wave of strikes. His son, Mojtaba Khamenei, was elected as his successor within days. Iran today stands at one of the most uncertain moments in its 5,000-year history. Its government is wounded, its military infrastructure is damaged. Its people are divided between those who mourn the supreme leader and those who celebrated his death in the streets. But if there is one lesson that 5 millennia of Iranian history teaches, it is this: Iran is not its government. It never has been. The Achaemenids fell, and Iran survived. The Sassanids fell, and Iran survived. The Mongols burned its cities to the ground, and Iran survived. Arab conquerors changed its religion, and Iran absorbed them. British and American intelligence agencies toppled its elected government, and Iran reasserted itself. A revolution replaced a monarchy with a theocracy, and the culture that predates both remained intact beneath the surface. Governments are temporary. Civilizations are not. Whatever emerges from the current crisis, whether the Islamic Republic transforms, collapses, or endures in a new form, the language of Ferdowsi, the poetry of Rumi, the memory of Cyrus, and the identity of a people who have called this land home for 5,000 years will still be there when the dust settles. They have outlasted every empire, every invasion, and every revolution that came before. There is no reason to believe this time will be different. That is not a prediction. That is a pattern. If you find these stories fascinating, make sure you subscribe to Bloodlines and Borders. Thank you for watching. If you want to go deeper, the next video on your screen is one you won't want to miss. I'll see you there.